Hello students, welcome to Legacy IS Academy. In today's video, we are going to discuss about recently signed agreement or pact between India and Iran related to the development and use of Chabahar Port. Now, Chabahar Port is a deep sea port. So, how the signing of this pact between the two nations is going to have a significant impact on India's what you can say trade as well as maritime relation with other countries, and what are the challenges that India may face in the future due to the signing of this pact or agreement. So, to give you a brief idea about why this particular issue is in news, so basically recently India and Iran, they have signed a 10-year contract for the operation of a terminal at the strategically important Chabahar port in Iran. This was overseen by the Union Minister for Shipping, Ports and Waterways, Mr. Sarbanand Sonowal, and India Ports Global Limited, that is IPGL, and Ports and Maritime Organization of Iran, that is PMI. They were the two organizations that have basically signed this agreement. In this context, IPGL will invest approximately $120 million to equip and operate the port for the duration of the contract. Now, let us try to understand about the Chabahar Port. So, Chabahar Port, as we have discussed, is an example of deep water port. Now, what do we mean by the term deep water port? Generally, if you talk about water depth, so for a large container ships, the minimum water depth that is required for them to ply through is somewhere about 30 to 35 feet. That means for a port to be classified as deep water port, the water depth near the coast should be at least 30 to 35 or even higher than that. So it is a deep water port. From that logic, that concept, situated in Sistan Baluchistan province of Iran. Sistan Baluchistan province was recently also in news because of the anti-Iran protest that was going on in the Baluchistan region of the Pakistan. So Baluchistan region of Pakistan, which is also a province of Pakistan, and Sistan Baluchistan region of Iran, both are kind of geographically connected to each other, only divided by the political boundary of the two countries. So also this port has strategic importance for India because it is the closest port that India can access toward the Middle East and is located in the open sea, providing easy and secure access for the large cargo ships, and that can embolden the overall trade links between India, Central Asia, and even as far as to the European continent. So the modern Chabahar port basically came into light, first of all, or came into being somewhere in the 1970s, and Tehran realized the strategic importance of the port when it was involved in a war with Iraq in the 1990s or early 1980s. So a part of the proposed international north-south transport corridor is also aiming to use this port as one of its strategic junction. So let us try to understand all this on the map to understand the location of the port as well as to understand that how INSTC will pass through it. So as you can see from this particular map here, this is India, and here we have a port of India in Gujarat state that is called as Kandla port. Here if you look closely in the Arabian Sea, we have Pakistan, and Pakistan has developed a port here that is called as Gwadar port. If you don't know, Gwadar port actually is a major point from which the Belt and Road Initiative and one of the part of Belt and Road Initiative of China, that is the China-Pakistan Economic Corridor, passes through. So basically, it is through Gwadar port. China is trying to build its shipment to here, and then overland through Pakistan, it will transport whatever shipment it has, and then further it will enter into the Pakistan-occupied Kashmir, and that is why India has objected about it. And further, it will go to the Xinjiang region of China in the north. So, just slightly to the west of Gwadar port of Pakistan, we can see we have the strategic location of Chabahar port, which is the port in Newt. And then from Chabahar port, you can see you can also, or India basically can now also have connectivity toward Afghanistan. That is land connectivity toward Afghanistan, where India has developed a highway called as Jaran Delaram Jahedan highway. So basically, this is also providing opportunity for India to bypass Pakistan if you want to have access, or if you want to have basically land access to the Afghanistan. Now to discuss about one term that we have talked about, that INSTC, which is short form for International North-South Transportation Corridor, which aims to connect the south part, that is from India, to the north part all the way up to Europe and Russia, also aims to take Chabahar Port into consideration. So this proposed project, basically, if you look at the route of this project, it starts from Mumbai. It is basically an example of multimodal transportation. Multimodal transportation means where not a single mode of transportation but multiple different types of transportation modes are used to transport shipment or cargo from one place to the other place. So to understand this, if you take a look at the map here, from Mumbai port, let us say some cargo has to be transshipped all the way to some European countries, for example, Poland or Germany. So a shipment can be transferred via the cargo ship, then it will reach the Chabahar port. Then from Chabahar port, it will be taken overland all the way up to Bandar Abbas, which is again a port of Iran situated on the Caspian Sea. Again through Caspian Sea, then the shipment can be transferred all the way up to the Astrakhan, which is a port in the Russia, and again from Astrakhan by the land route, which can be roadways, railways, the shipment can be transferred to Volgograd, Moscow, and as far as St. Petersburg, which is northernmost city of Russia, toward Europe. And then from St. Petersburg, you have very good land connectivity, you have water connectivity, as well as railway connectivity to different regions of Europe. And for example, from St. Petersburg, if you want to take a ship route, you can go to the Baltic Sea. From Baltic, you can go to the North Sea. From North Sea, then you can have access to UK, all of the European countries via Celtic Sea. And then you have the other proposed project, that is the standard route through which India currently ships most of its shipment, which you can see from this diagram is much more larger route, takes much more time, and also the cost is higher. That is, if you want to use the Red Sea, Suez Canal, Mediterranean Sea route here. So this will drastically shorten the distance India has to use right now to transfer or have any kind of trade with the European countries, especially the Western European countries as well as Russia. So there also Chabahar Port can act as a very good strategic location. Now let us try to understand about the brief history of this project. So basically, India became interested in this project somewhere in the year 2002. It was this year when the National Security Advisor of Iran, Hassan Rouhani, under the presidency of Muhammad Khatami, held discussion with the then basically National Security Advisor of India, Brijesh Misra, to develop this port. Once this matter was discussed between the national security advisors, the matter was then discussed in the following year, in the month of January 2003, between the then Prime Minister of India, Atal Bihari Vajpayee, as well as the then, we can say, President of Iran, Muhammad Khatami. And thus, after the discussion, both countries signed a declaration which is referred as the New Delhi Declaration. And it was the New Delhi Declaration where both countries agreed that there is a growing strategic convergence that is needed to be underpinned with a strong economic relationship. And for this, the development or growth of Chabahar Port can play a very important role. However, this proposed project could not take off with so much fervor, and the reason was the policy of United States, which it was undertaking during the presidency of George W. Bush. And at the same time, US and India were also trying to deepen their partnership, especially after the signing of the civil nuclear deal between India and US. And George W. Bush, and under him in his presidency, the US declared Iran as one of the axis of evil along with Iraq and North Korea. And due to this, it then also used its clout and tried to persuade and push New Delhi to abandon its strategic relationship with Tehran, and thus the Chabahar port became it became a casualty of this worsening relationship between Iran and US and deepening relationship between India and US. However, after 2015, again a fresh development has been observed here. And the reason is simply because it was in the year 2015, the talks were going on between Iran and the P5+1 countries, that is permanent member of this United Nations as well as European Union, before bore fruit or came to fruition. And thus, Iran and the world powers announced their framework deal and committed to finalize a comprehensive deal. The deal was basically related to the nuclear programs and the limitations that Iran has to undertake if we want to develop peaceful nuclear energy. Now, India's approach also stemmed from the fact that China, in this time, under the presidency of Xi Jinping, was aggressively trying to pursue ambitious Belt and Road Initiative. And this Belt and Road Initiative was trying to increase the China's connectivity throughout the entire Central Asian region, West Asian region, through the Indian Ocean region, and also all the way to the Europe and Russia. And thus, India did not want to be left behind, and thus it also wanted to have a similar kind of project overall. And INSTC development of Chabahar Port could add a very important strategic value to it. Now, what is the significance that we can highlight that India can reap after the development of the Chabahar Port, or after it begins operating the Chabahar Port? So now Chabahar could potentially become an important hub to connect India with the landlocked countries of Central Asia and Afghanistan, because currently we do not have access to Afghanistan and thus do not have access to Central Asia also, because for going to Central Asia we need to go over China, and for going to Afghanistan we need to go over Pakistan, and both of these countries do not have very good relationship with India. So that is why Chabahar Port can act as an alternative route. However, experts also argue that to better realize the commercial and strategic potential of Chabahar Port, it should be connected with the larger project, that is the INSTC, International North-South Transportation Corridor, about which we already have discussed in the beginning of the video. So INSTC and Chabahar Port will complement each other for optimizing Indian connectivity with both the largest nation of the world, Russia, as well as the entire European and Asian landmass, or Eurasian continental landmass, we can say. However, it is easier said than done, because India will also have to face several challenges before it can optimally use INSTC as well as Chabahar Port. Now, three challenges we can present here. The first challenge is, we know that few years back Russia waged a war in Ukraine, and this war in Ukraine has basically destroyed Europe's relationship with Russia. So how successful INSTC is going to be, given that one of the major aim of this project was to connect India with Europe using the Russia's land as a corridor. So this is going to be a difficult program. Second, US also, the relationship with Iran and US has deteriorated, especially during the presidency of Donald Trump, and thus US has reiterated its point or its approach that anyone who is considering to have business deals with Iran needs to be aware of the potential risk of sanctions. Now, obviously, since the Indo-US relationship are at its peak, they have become much more deeper, they have become much more strategic in nature as compared to a decade ago. So, US has not clearly said that it will impose sanctions on India, but indirect measures can obviously be taken, for which India need to be prepared for. And third problem also is from the perspective of the security of the region where the Chabahar Port is situated. Because as we have discussed in the beginning of the video, Chabahar Port is a part of a province of Iran which is called as Sistan Baluchistan province, and that province basically is facing a lot of problems, because basically the people from both Iranian side, or we can say militia from both Iranian side as well as Pakistani side, want to merge this territory to create a separate state or separate nation of Baluchistan. So here also we can have similar attacks, we can see, that can be undertaken by the militia and undertaken by the terrorist troops. So this is something that also we have to take into consideration. So that is all about the Indo-Iran Chabahar Port deal and the strategic significance as well as the future challenges. That is all for this video. Thank you very much.